except for once a month to have a meeting, and things change. It takes us about 3 years to get through the board meeting cycle in our schools. And so things have changed since the last time we were here. And it's good to see you, and we're looking forward to hearing how things are going at Franklin. We will have good reports about you, right? Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, thanks for being here.
No pressure, just want to say thank you very much for being here tonight, guys, and hope you have a great year.
And I also wanted to thank you for being here. I want to, just one question I have, a very serious question, and then I also want to make a note before that is, I noticed that the basketball shorts for men and boys are starting to go back up. Like when I was way back in the 70s and 80s, right? And then they went below knees with Michael Jordan, but it's interesting how the basketball uniforms have changed over the times. But my question for you, what's that? Fashion scene. But my question is, who are your individual favorite Lakers basketball players?
My favorite is Kobe Bryant.
My favorite is Allen Iverson. My favorite is Tracy McGrady.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for helping us out today on such short notice. And I wish you well in the rest of your season and the rest of your school year. And I hope you're proud to represent Franklin Boys. Thanks again.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. 50 volts, I know. Okay, thank you. So, character word of the month is patience, and we prepared a little surprise for you.
The character word of the month for February is patience. I came down to Franklin Middle School to find out more about patience. After all, it is defined as the capacity, habit, or fact of being patient.
How does that make sense?
I guess I never thought about it like that. I asked around, and this is what I heard from Franklin students and staff. What does it mean to be patient?
To wait your turn and oh my god, I keep forgetting to wait for stuff and be oh wait, can we restart it?
Yeah, you're good.
I forgot. Wait, what did I say?
When I get asked the same question 1,000 times in one period, I stay calm, cool, collected, and I don't lose my temper.
What it means to be patient is to wait for what you deserve.
It's to wait.
To wait? Okay.
Being patient is like waiting for your turn and stuff, and like not like saying, "Oh, come on, I want this to happen." And stuff.
Okay.
Make impulsive decisions and think about it.
Cool.
Except I'm not patient.
No.
Neither am I.
No.
Yo no tengo la neta.
Nada. Nada de paciencia.
No. Stay in line.
Stay in line.
To be still. I don't know. Able to do things with the kids when they're screaming and hollering and having a hard time, and you're able to just sit there and be very calm, and it helps them be calm.
Good. Be respectful.
Be respectful.
Wait your turn to talk. Don't be mad and just be patient means like wait. Just wait for something that you want to happen.
Sometimes you just have to wait.
Wait when your mom's talking.
To wait when your mom's talking? What do you think?
To wait.
To wait? How about you?
To wait.
Like, keep calm.
All these different ideas about patience. I had to ask the hard question. Has anybody ever told you to be patient?
Yeah.
Your parent all the time?
Yeah, lots of people. My dad,
Yeah.
mom,
Right on.
teachers.
Teachers? Yeah, what about you, man?
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing? All right, right on. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who?
My mom.
You?
My mom.
Yeah, your mom tells you that all the time? Your, your coaches? ¿Quién?
Mi mamá.
¿Y a ti? Igual? Okay. Your mom? So there you have it. I was fortunate enough to hear others' perspectives on being patient. And some of those ideas I can apply to my own practice of being patient. But for some of us, there's no patience to give. Mr. Sanders, what does it mean to be patient?
Let me ask my class. Guys, do I have patience?
No! None.
Until next time, keep practicing patience.
So the voice in the video, I'm going to recite. First, I'm Sherry Anderson, principal of Franklin Middle School, and just recently back from my own private holiday. So I'm trying to catch up. Artemio Chavez is the voice behind and has made our videos, and he's just never going for it. He's brand new to my school this year. And Andrew Espinola, he filled in for me while I was out, and I think he was very happy he came back, but he did a wonderful job. And then Sherry Carroll came in to help out with the building. So, and it's been in the district for a long time at elementary and is getting your groove on with middle school. So, my team. Okay, Sherry. Okay. That's all it is.
President Walker? Should we wait just one moment? We're jumping ahead on the agenda.
We have one thing on the agenda.
Okay.
Many of you know, we lost a student in the district a few days ago to a serious traffic accident. So we'd like to spend a moment of silence to honor the memory of Angel or Angela Macho, age 14, who passed away in Natchez on January 20th. So please join me in a moment of silence. It's always painful when you lose someone so young, so bright. And now, and we have the language knowledge.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation.
The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres.
Across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Cliticat, and Yakima counties.
Today we honor the Native people who are tied to the land through history, legends, and cultures.
We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today.
We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect.
And a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture.
It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
There we go, that's me. Okay, so who makes up our school, right? Pretty much we're a typical Yakima school, if you look at our demographics. But we are the largest middle school in Yakima with 922 students. And interestingly enough, we are deemed by the state to be a challenging school. Not sure what that means. Yes, I do. But because we have over a 60% free and reduced lunch rate, so we're at 83%. So next.
In the Yakima School District, our promise is simple: to ensure a safe, equitable, inclusive, and quality learning environment so that every student thrives and succeeds. We believe that every student possesses the capacity to meet high academic and social and emotional expectations, which will prepare each student for productive and informed participation in our society and in the world. The strategic plan outlines our compass. So the strategic plan is our compass to the Franklin mission statement. It's the school's laser focus for our work and student achievement. This is the 9th year here at Franklin that staff has collaborated together in creating our mission statement. Our mission statement states, we ensure that everyone learns at high levels. We believe that everyone here at Franklin, staff and students within Franklin's walls are constantly learning and they never stop learning. And here's a little bit of information about our instructional leadership team. So our instructional leadership team is our guiding coalition here at Franklin. It is made up of members who wanted to be on the leadership team and members from the PLC conference that we went to last August. The team encompasses all facets of our stakeholders, including some of our Franklin parents.
So this year, the district has introduced the teaching and learning strategies to achieve high quality teaching and learning in their district. The three strategies or the three levels are professional learning communities, induction, mentoring, and coaching, and principal supervision. At Franklin, we are committed to all, but our focus is on our professional learning communities this year. So at the building level, our professional learning community is broken down into our professional learning teams. We define our professional learning teams as a group of people working interdependently to achieve a common goal for which members are held mutually accountable. Collaborative teams are the fundamental building blocks of PLCs and our school. Like Artemio said in the last slide, for the last 9 years, Franklin Middle School teachers have been working in collaborative teams. This year, we are calling our teams PLTs. Teams work together by content, by grade level, and vertically by department. Teachers create learning experiences using the big four questions of before. What do we want students to learn? How will we know if students have learned it? What will we do if they haven't learned it? And what have we done if they have learned it? Teachers are focused on effective planning around the essential standards to ensure that students are getting mastery of those standards. And then all of our professional learning teams ascribe to our collective commitments. We examine our essential standards and engage in what we call our inquiry cycle. So on our strategic data use, our PLC teams engage in, of course, our inquiry cycle whenever we want to examine our curricular programs or classroom teaching closely. The inquiry cycle is an ongoing process of reflecting on practice, then undertaking professional learning, followed by implementing that professional learning and then assessing the impact it has on our building. Some of the data tools we use to help us make decisions to improve a student's learning experience here at Franklin are SABERS, which stands for our social, academic, and emotional behavior risk screener. So 3 times a year, Franklin students take this screener to assess their social emotional learning and their social emotional learning needs. What we do is we take that information and we give support to students who need more support in social emotional learning. We also give the reading inventory in our English language arts class 3 times a year. That gauges our students' reading fluency. And we also give our Fast Bridge math assessment 3 times a year as well, which gauges our students' conceptual understanding in math. Our teachers are also giving common assessments, which are developed collaboratively by grade level and departmental teams using their collective wisdom. We are also giving them the Smarter Balanced Intro assessments. This assessment is used to support teacher instruction and helps them identify student learning needs. And of course, we also look at data such as our SBA, the Washington Comprehensive Assessment in Science, and our WIDA test, which is for our English language learners. We also use a variety of teams in the building to help us make the data-informed decisions. So some of the teams that we use are our ILT, our instructional leadership team that Artemio mentioned above, and our PBIS team when it comes to social emotional learning and behavior.
This is the inquiry cycle process that drives all the work at Franklin and has for years. It includes the 4 big questions and the work around them. We applaud the work of the board, our superintendent, the cabinet, all directors over the past year for directing the district to the right work. working in PLTs, focusing around inquiry cycle based on your guaranteed standards. The work really starts with collective teacher efficacy, which is defined as a staff's shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcome, including those who are disengaged or disadvantaged. That comes from Hattie's work. John Hattie's research, Visible Learning, is a culmination of 25 years of examining and synthesizing more than 1,850 meta-analyses comprising of more than 108,000 studies involving 300 million students. It works.
Just scroll up. 2 meters.
Okay, around the world. And his work focuses on what will improve learning, as nearly every intervention can show some evidence of success. We need to not ask what works, but what works the best, and seek comparisons between the different ways of influencing student learning. Success in Hattie's world is determined by effect size. An effect size of 0.40 is considered a year's growth for a student. Collective teacher efficacy is ranked as the #1 factor by him, and it has an effect size of 1.57, so technically 3 years growth for your students. The combination of Hattie and
Timmy's fingers are too cold.
well, they're making a move between Hattie and DeFore, between their collaboration and efficacy is a match made in heaven. So, using the inquiry cycle, how is it working for us? This is the Washington School Improvement Framework, or WISIF. It gives a granular look at the school beyond proficiency. The framework combines as many as 9 indicators, such as graduation rates, attendance, and proficiency on the state tests, into a 1 to 10 decile score, which is across the bottom in the colors, with orange being the lowest and being the lowest 5% of the state, to dark blue being the top 10% of the state. Instead of simply looking at a snapshot in time of a percent of students passing a standard on a state test, we now have a metric that looks at the growth of individual students over time. And so what they do is when a student tests, and let's say the student scored 2,300 on the math test, they would put that student in a cohort with all the students across the state in the same scoring range. And then the following year, they look to see if the student grew, stayed static, or went down in their score. The ID threshold is the bottom 5% of all students across the state. All students who score below that threshold will be identified for comprehensive support. It also identifies your student groups. If you have a student group that is under the threshold, they will be identified for targeted support. This slide represents the trend of student achievement at Franklin. It also identifies subgroups that we need to work on. The Washington School Improvement Framework also includes each student group individually, creating a holistic vision of the school through 2 lenses: the performance of the all group and that of the student group populations. From this view, the school can identify the groups to support. And this is probably our guiding practice, is looking at this slide right here. So this slide illustrates that our students at the very top in the orange are not making proficiency on the state tests. And you can tell by the color. However, in the school, we are growing students at the absolute highest rate you can grow them. So the next to the median, the student growth percentage, we are in the blues. And if this was a live document from OSBI and you hovered over it, you would see that in language arts, we are at 10 in every single category. In math, we're 9s and 8s. So we use this to tell if we're doing our job in our school with our teachers. Please note that the growth in ELL students and low income, we leave no one behind in this school. Note the lack of growth in students with disabilities. And so since this data came out, that has been one of our big targets. Also note our attendance scores. We're working on those too. The next slides that we're going to show you represent the COVID dip. It's not an excuse, it's just our reality. COVID affected our students, our staff, and our families. In regards to our students, the effects are in academics, social, emotional health, and attendance. We will bounce back. The next few slides illustrate our current reality from which we set our goals for our student improvement plan. We are realizing the amount of academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning that was lost during the pandemic. This slide shows our math and our ELA scores. The top in the pink is 2021, 22, so that was last year. The bottom, 18, 19, is where we were pre-COVID. These are our science scores. Only our 8th graders take them. And again, you can see the difference between the 2 years.
To take a look back, Franklin was at 95% attendance before COVID hit, 95%. During COVID, we went down to 53%. And that was when you just have to check in once a day. But we are climbing back. This is this year's. And we are led by our 6th graders at 86%.
So looking at our attendance and our scores, the Franklin staff set school-wide goals as well as content area goals. We do this every fall. The goals we set, which are on the screen, and become a part of our school improvement plan. We consider all our data, not just as staff scores, and we analyze, we had staff analyze their own scope and sequence to see what they can tighten up on. Plans and adjustments are made based on best practices, creating a current scope and sequence, and then the staff develops action plans for monthly evaluations of their work. Our action plans are usually pretty simple. In August and September, we look at all the data that has come in. We make sure we're aligned to the guaranteed standards, and then we set our goals and our actions. And then monthly, we review the data from common assessments and we adjust. Our action plans are seeped in teacher efficacy and the data, and it's kept simple with a laser focus on what's best for our students. Just in case you forgot, there's our inquiry cycle. We keep it simple. We utilize that cycle and Hattie's work. When we set goals, we narrow the focus onto a claim or a target or a standard that is problematic. This year, our focus in language arts is claim 2, that students can produce effective writing for a range of purposes and audiences, specifically being able to write across the contents. The whole entire building works under this goal. Students will read something relevant, whether it be the rules in PE or artistic styles in art or a graph in technology or the results of a science experiment or maybe even a math problem or informational articles in social studies or language arts. From the reading, they will answer an essential question, asking them to explain something, draw a conclusion, consider author's purpose or point of view. All answers require textual evidence and, if necessary, include the reasoning of why the evidence supports their answer. This is our math goal, and the same thing goes with it. Teachers notice students struggling with word problems, so the focus was on claim 3, communicating reasoning.
We do have an attendance focus this year, of course, trying to get back to those pre-COVID attendance numbers. A couple of reasons that we think that we're still down in attendance is number one, students just experienced not attending for 2 years. And they just got out of the habit. Number two, mental health is now a legitimate reason to miss school. It's excused. And many of our students are reported by their parents to be struggling mentally. Also, misinformation is still out there. Parents think if their child is coughing or someone in their household is sick, then the student needs to stay home for 10 days. So we're trying to combat those barriers by communicating with our families through our parent newsletters. We're also scheduling community engagement board meetings with our parents. We have scheduled 52 of those this year, and we have had a success rate of about 32%. I need to scroll here. Two fingers. Scroll. It's his computer. So we've had about a 32% success rate, and a success rate is defined by parents coming into the building, talking to us, sitting down, planning together to see the problems that they may be encountering, what are those barriers, and then building a plan. And some things that we've included in the plans are transportation, mental health, schedule changes, this is a class schedule change. We've added classes for our behavior specialists and our academic specialists, put them in those classes. We've had special ed referrals, we've had 504 referrals, and also sometimes parents just say they need help parenting, just need help. So to meet the needs of the last one, we've teamed up with ESP 105 to teach parenting classes in both English and Spanish. And then finally, we're bringing back big school events like we used to do. So we had a winter fest that was really well attended. We had turkey bingo that was really successful. And then in the spring this year, we're bringing back the Franklin Follies to showcase the talent that we have here at Franklin.
So we have our 3 SIP goals of math and language arts and attendance. However, as evidenced by our WSIP data, our language learners and our student with disabilities groups are both struggling. We cannot ignore them. So the following slides show our latest actions. As an interest to the board, this slide represents the new language learner test, the world-class instructional design and assessment for WIDA. It is used as a way of measuring developing English language. It assesses comprehension and communication in English for language learners. This is a sample of a reading question from the WIDA. You can see the complexity of the reading, the academic vocabulary needed, and the math skills required to get the correct answer. And remember that this question is asked to 6th through 8th graders. You'll notice in the, I know it's hard to read, but you'll notice that there are exponents in some of those answers. The 6th graders haven't learned exponents yet. This is an example of what they're having to do. In researching best practices for our students with disabilities, we were led to the Washington State Inclusionary Practices Project. I think this is our 3rd or 4th year in it. Although its intention was originally to address students with disabilities, the project's learnings have grown to represent equity for all students. Franklin, along with Roosevelt Elementary and MLK, have joined 140 schools across the state to be a part of this project. We're going to show you just a quick clip of this video, but for the board's information, this is on the OSP website. It's been shown nationwide and was at the AWSP conference. along with data from our school, which I'll show you. So you'll recognize some faces in this.
As a part of OSPI's Inclusionary Practices Project, funded by our state legislature, the AESD is working with over 140 school teams across the state of Washington to improve and increase inclusionary practices. As Washington State is ranked one of the lowest for inclusive education, students with disabilities are often excluded from core instruction, and this project seeks to address educational inequities experienced by students. Inclusion means that all students have a right to purposefully participate in the general education setting, both academically and socially. It is also a philosophy based on the fundamental understanding that all children are competent, capable, and should be held to high expectations. There's no such thing as an average learner. Research shows us that every child has a unique set of learning needs, strengths, preferences, and interests. When educators find ways to offer choices and flexibility in classrooms, all learners flourish. Hello, my name is Cassie Stevens, and I am currently serving as the Inclusionary Practices Project Lead for the AESD. We are beyond excited to share with you this compilation of video interviews from a few of our teams participating in the project. As you listen to their voices, we encourage you to learn more, get involved, and spread the word about the importance and impact of improving inclusive education, not only for our students with disabilities, but for all learners.
So I see this work changing my school's culture and instilling the belief that all students can achieve their maximum potential, where before students were separated according to ability and functioning levels, where now we are impassioned towards serving our students as a whole school community.
Our current way of serving students with disabilities is not the most effective. Our students with disabilities are pulled out of the classroom to receive the services as outlined in their individual educational plans. This creates further gaps in their learning because they're pulled out of core content time. We have one resource room teacher trying to serve all of the students with disabilities in our building.
I just felt like, oh my goodness, where has this been all my life? I saw immediate connections between UDL, not only with special education, students with disabilities, but also students who are learning additional languages, twice exceptional students, and everything in between.
When you step into administration, you see that it's not 30 kids, it's hundreds of kids. That really, for me anyway, shifted the urgency and the desire to do something.
Every student that comes to our school is a general education student. If we start with that basis, then inclusionary practices is the only choice. But I also think that the strengths that we can lean into is the desire of our staff to continue to learn and grow and change and do what's right for our kiddos.
Just changing the teaching practices that are happening in our district is something I'm excited for the future.
Anything that we can do that will give those kids a leg up is just so needed. They do not feel excluded like they're some special person in a bad way.
The inclusionary model automatically makes a team between the special education staff and the general ed staff. There's kind of an invisible line, but with inclusionary, that line disappears because it's a team working for the goals of all students. And I think it opens the door for teachers to just be together and teach. And I think that is so powerful. It'll benefit all students. They'll all have the same opportunity to access core.
So we, in our first year, which was in a COVID year, and we did our own little test group, and we took a 6th grade class of our resource room kids in math, and we put them in a regular math class, and the two teachers co-taught, and their teaching was seamless. One would teach for a while, then when they had a transition, the other one would go up and teach. You had no idea who was the resource room teacher and who was the actual math teacher. And actually, the resource room teacher, math was not a strong suit, and so you could not tell the difference between them. You couldn't tell by looking in the room, the kids were interspersed who was a resource student and who was a regular math student. So we ran the data on it, and this data was presented a couple years ago at PWSP. The students who were on IEPs, on the individualized education plans, in the regular classroom had spring scale score of 2389, which was a gain of 11 points. Now you already saw our data on how far backwards our school went. These kids went forward. 4 students moved up to a level 2, and 1 student moved from a 2 to a 3. It was the first year ever I've had resource kids go up a level. The students, so we couldn't fit them all in, it was our pilot. And the students who stayed in the resource room classes, average scale score was a 2281, a gain of 3 points. 4 students went down in scores and no one moved up. Because of this data, we've increased it now. We are doing it at 6th and 7th grade. And then we're also now working on our ELL students and pre-teaching the language arts that they're going to have in the classroom. So if they need help with the reading or the vocabulary, they're learning it so they can participate when they're in the classroom itself.
So along with our goals, we also have a few key initiatives. The first key initiative that I'm going to be touching on here is around social emotional learning. This year, we really wanted to ensure that everyone was receiving social emotional learning support. So we focused on a few different things this year when it comes to that. We reinforced our multi-tiered systems of support. Made sure that we were using screening tools, assessment tools, and surveys to feed kids into services. All of our kids receive social emotional learning in homeroom through our Second Steps curriculum. And then we were also given the gift from the district of having an academic and behavior specialist full time. And something that is unique to Franklin is we were able to create our educational success program with that. So this summer, we met with members of our Tier 2 team that was comprised of counselors, our behavior and academic specialists, and the administration. And we began creating our educational success program. Like I said, throughout the summer, our team just spent the summer working on what the educational success program looked like. And so our academic specialists and behavior specialists are teaching 3 classes. The purpose behind this was the knowledge that before a student can benefit from the learning, their need to feel safe and secure was really important. The program not only addresses students' academic needs, but also their social emotional needs. The specialists, again, were assigned 3 classes of students identified as needing Tier 2 support. So that's just extra support in regards to either behavior or social emotional learning, or their academic goals as well. So each specialist also has a coordination period, which they can use to push into classrooms, collect, review, and analyze data. They can meet with students and work in small groups or meet with individual students. The specialists then meet with our Tier 2 team that is made up of administration, counselors, our academic and behavior specialists, along with the mental health therapists from ESD 105 and our student assistance professional. And so what we do in those meetings is we discuss the data gathered in those classes, and then we meet to talk about next steps for those students, either screening in or screening out to additional services. We also have additional partnerships at Franklin that we provide with our ESD 105 student assistance professional and our mental health therapist. The student assistance professional meets with students at risk for drugs, alcohol, gangs, or just if they need a little more need in the social emotional realm. And then our mental health therapist, she's been assigned a caseload that is given to her by our counseling team. So our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade counselors meet and determine the caseload for a mental health therapist to meet with students. The link that is provided below where it says program details, if you have access to the PowerPoint, you can click on that And that actually gives you basically the full scope and sequence of what our educational success program is. Barb, I think you need access. I'm sorry, I'll make sure you get that. But it goes from screening, screening in, screening out, what the curriculum is, what students do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and this is actually the room that the students learn in. And so on the cabinet, you can see on Monday, students are practicing resources and strategies. Tuesday, they're working on growth mindset. Wednesday, they're working on self-agency. Thursday is just kind of, they're working on themselves and setting goals. And then Friday, learning how to engage with each other. And so if you guys wanted to take a look at the program in detail, the link is right there.
Okay, our second initiative is our wish list. We have a wish list. So our first wish is we would like to be able to get more high school credits at the middle school level. We think that that's an excellent way of being able to connect kids to high school and to stop the ninth grade dropout. Foreign language is one, and I just had a meeting with T&L and we've kind of resolved this one. But our students take foreign language for 2 years here, and we would like to see them get credit for each year. Our curriculum is aligned with the high school, and actually our teacher is a college professor, and so that would get 2 language credits under their belts so that they could do well. The second one, and Andy Webb has been a great help with this one, is we do ingenuity and geometry. So this is talking to DeForest question number 4. What do you do with the kids that already know it? So we have these kids, and they may not all be highly capable, but we have kids that have great math skills. And so concurrent with their regular 8th grade math class, we have managed to find ways to get them a laptop. Now everybody has a laptop, but we got them laptops, and they would work at home and work on geometry. We gave them access to a teacher for at least an hour a day to help guide them. And we've been doing this for about 3 years. We struggle for funding every single year, but we've been doing it for 3 or 4 years. And every year we have sent kids to the high school that have finished geometry and can go in as an Algebra 2 student. So this year we started 20, and we have 9 still on track. So when you realize the middle school kids working at home on a laptop doing geometry, it's pretty impressive. If it ever became a class, that would be really cool too, that we could have. So our other one is alternative middle school paths. And we think that just having somewhere for the kids that we can recognize by 8th grade that are not maybe on the most academic path, if they can have a program or something they could go into that is more hands-on, that makes them feel a sense of success in what they're doing, that would be a really great idea. I was in an alternative high school before I came to Yakima, and we hooked up with Boeing in the WADS program, and those kids were trained with Boeing's programs, and for 2 years. The last year they got paid for going to class. And when they came out, they were guaranteed an interview with Boeing, and they really did a good job. So whatever is out there. Continued support for our social emotional learning. The kids are needing them, and the program has been a help. We don't have data for it at the end of the year, but we would like to see continued funding for that and for the behavior and academic specialists. So that is our wish list. And then we have one more surprise for you, because this school isn't just about academics. I can sit up here and battle data with the best of you, but we have other things besides academics in this school, and we wanted to show you our music and our other programs. This is Artemio's video again.
Okay. Hello, school board. My name is Artemio Chavez, assistant principal here at Franklin Middle School. On behalf of our Franklin administrative team, staff, and students, welcome to Franklin. Here at Franklin, we focus on academics, but we also focus.
If you notice, his head is cut off. He had a student, Jazzway, who was being suspended in his office, and he said, "Hey, film me." So this is Jazz Wakefield, filming our cameo.
On giving our students opportunities to be successful in a variety of ways. But don't take my word for it. Check this out.
Hello.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, school board.
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 Adia, say thank you.
Say it loud.
The end.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's always rewarding to see what our schools are up to, what our students and staff are doing. I'd like to open it for questions or comments from board members.
Thank you for the presentation. Very informative. I do have a couple questions and then some comments, so it might take a few minutes here. I'm not familiar with the two terms that were used at the beginning, so I just want some clarification. One was a typical school and then challenging school. So I'm wondering if those are OSPI terms that I'm not familiar with. So I'd like to know what those two terms are. Is Franklin a typically challenging school, or I'm not sure what that means. So if you don't mind clarifying that for me so I can understand it, maybe learn new terminology.
So challenging, if you have a national boards program in your school for teachers, the state considers a school as challenging if they have above a 60% brain reduced. So that's their label. Teachers, so if you receive a national board certificate, you receive $5,000 a year additional monies. If you're in a challenging school, because they're trying to get people to work in the inner city schools in a lot of towns, not so much here, you'll receive $10,000. So it's their label for the challenging school. So, and I think typical is more of, we're no better, we're just a mix of kids.
Yes. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I do appreciate that. And then the other question was in regards to mental health. What are some of the challenges, the issues, maybe perhaps mental health disorders that you're seeing in students? So I'm just curious about that as well.
I think probably right now our biggest ones are suicidal addictions. It's the big one. And at least one a week. And we just had a student, Eric, who went to Seattle 2 days ago. So that's probably been the biggest one. Depression is right in there. Apathy, we're just kind of disconnected, and it's getting better. It is getting better. We still have students who don't take their masks off because they don't have any severe things. So it is getting better.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to say I appreciate your team, all the work you've done this year. I really appreciate the positive attitude that you all have, considering the challenges, right? Considering all the data that you showed today, and which is another thing I really appreciate you saying, here's our data, these are our areas that we're not doing so good, but here's our plan, right? So I love the organizational leadership and the strategic thinking, the strategic planning, and working on your current successes, right? And building on those. So I really appreciate it. I want to thank you for that. I did visit the school back right before the holidays, and I got to witness and it was great to see all the great work, and I'm glad that you had that presentation at the end showing all the other things, right? The non-academic type of activities. I got to see, teachers and students interacting, and I think it was a metal shop, wood shop, and so just all those other type of programs that enhance our students and their learning experience. So I want to thank you for all the work that you do. I know that with those challenges, we have a good team in place, and we're up to the challenge to improve things for all our students. So thank you so much for all your leadership.
Thank you.
I would echo what Director Navarro says. My heart breaks when I think about middle school students, as a parent of a 15-year-old, struggling with these kind of challenges. And the truth is, as a society, we've done a really good job of scaring the heck out of our kids, pop culture and everything else on down. And I know that when they're here and when they're present and when they're surrounded by attentive and loving staff, they are inspired, they're encouraged, and they're given some hope, which they're sorely missing in life. So I want to thank each and every one of you who work here at Franklin for all that you do for our kids in that regard. That's mission critical. My question, on the side note, I loved your comments about the potential with the foreign language program, especially as you think about students who are high school bound. I know this is a big school with more than 900 students. Can you give me a ballpark of the percentage of your student population that's involved in a foreign language class?
So we have 7 classes a day, 30, they're all full, so 30 to 34 kids in a class, and they go year round. So 7,000, 200 and something. Mm-hmm. We would do more if we had more funding.
Thank you for the great presentation. It's going to take me a little while to digest all of the data that's up here, and I hope that I get the opportunity to link into those, drill down in that presentation. I know I don't have that now, but hopefully we'll get it. But I really want to applaud you on your focus for attendance. I know that when kids come, they automatically start to feel better because they're surrounded by their friends. And re-engaging those students is a focus for all of us. And we know that they can't learn if they're not here. So if you take that understanding to the next level, if they're here, they're engaged with dedicated staff, and they will learn, and your scores will improve, and we're seeing that. When you were talking about attendance, you focused on 5, 6 different ways that you're trying to meet that attendance goal. I wondered if you could elaborate on your community engagement boards and what those boards do. I think you said you've got 52.
We've done 52.
You've had already this year?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that entails, but it sounds like an awful lot of work.
So it usually entails staying after work and counselor, administration, even our we have an attendance secretary, and she stays. And then we call the parents in, and it's more of a what can we do to help you because your child's not in school. And then from that, the things that you uncover are sometimes so sad. But then we do what we can to try and support. If it means buying them an alarm clock, it just depends. Depends on the family. And so it's just about re-engaging them and the parent too, to our school.
Are you seeing success from, it's maybe unrealistic to expect that all 52 are attending regularly now, but are you seeing success from those meetings with parents and re-engaging with that family?
We do. Some we don't, and some we do. But everyone we do is a win. So just keep chipping away at them. And sometimes you get one to come, and then their friend will come. So yes, I think 32%.
Yeah, have met, and we've created plans, and it has improved. On the ones that we haven't brought in, we still keep calling them. That's when we do home visits, to make sure, and that's been good. And then we'll get them in. So we don't have anybody right now that we have not either talked on the phone or met with. We have 100% of our families we are in touch with, which is hard because they move and we don't remember. But our security staff has been really helpful with that too, and our fantastic attendance secretary, and just everybody pitching in. I know that family. I know that I know her older sister. It takes all of us.
I appreciate the effort. I really do. And we all know that life is what happens when you have the plans. So a lot of these families, life happens. And the goal is to make sure that somebody is important to them. And when you say that you've reached out to everyone and you don't have anyone that you haven't at least touched base with once, that's really commendable. So thank you for that extra effort. I know that it's time taken away from other things, but I applaud you for that extra effort because it's time well spent. We can get kids back in school, get them re-engaged, and get them back on right path. They can be successful, and we know that happens. So thank you so much. It was a great presentation. I'm looking forward to digging down and learning more. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation and for all of your dedication to our kids and students. It's really heartbreaking to hear about some of the challenges that kids are going through. And my sister English to recovery for the student. With the data that you showed, it's clear that there's a lot of work ahead, and it's something that we're really planning to begin to address some of those things. I really appreciated seeing the pictures and the videos of the kids today that shows the whole other side to report out of the schools, the student outcomes and the test scores and things like that is one thing. But seeing the kids smiling and their artwork and some of the very good artists here at Franklin and some of the other activities that just really show that other side and maybe help see the kids feel at school as well. So thank you so much. And middle school in particular is a challenging group. So I applaud you all for choosing middle school as your career and really enjoying all of the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give all the compliments from my colleagues and as another one myself. I'm really pleased to hear that you're teaching vocabulary to students that are struggling, either ELL students or others. That's one of my favorite pet ideas is pre-teaching vocabulary. I had a couple questions. I was curious in your parenting classes, how many attendees are you getting, and do you use kind of a base curriculum or program as a guiding tool for parenting classes?
So we're getting, they graduate out, so it's like a 6-week program, and there's about 20 families in each program, and they've kind of capped it there. So we've been full every 6 weeks. The curriculum, I'm trying to get the name of it, there is a strengthening families, and it came from a person. Yes. And then they come in, they have a potluck, and then they learn. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear that many parents are involved in themselves and taking advantage of that resource. I also had a question. You mentioned National Board Certified staff. How many National Board Certified staff do we have in this building?
In this building? Well, myself included, and I had to give it up when I became a principal. But probably one of the most rewarding things I ever did as a teacher was become National Board Certified. We have 7, I think now. Mm-hmm.
And we have anybody working on it right now?
Okay, so I kind of missed the first half of the year, and that's usually when I check in with them. I'll let you know, but usually we have at least one. Well, usually they work in groups of 2. It's great to have someone to help them do it. I'll find out again, so I'll let you know.
I'm just kind of curious. I'm a big believer in that program as well. And I also had one other question I'm real pleased, or one other comment I'm real pleased with the increased focus on social emotional learning. That 20 years ago, it was hard to get any staff who would do that other than a counselor. And now it looks like you're getting buy-in from teachers around the importance of that and connecting with kids. Do you use a student advisory program here to deliver services?
We have homeroom.
Yeah, homeroom advisory. Mm-hmm. Thank you again so much. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, congratulations on the good work you're doing, and it's a real pleasure to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have any updates from members of the board.
Last Friday, I sent you all kind of the message that I sent out to the lecturers and our director area. It's a compilation of information from last week. On that, in that report, there's a lot of resource information in there that you can drill down if you're so inclined. If they were asking for 2 different bits of information. One was on mandatory recess. There's a bill that's being addressed that would mandate 30 minutes of recess for elementary kids every day. And they're asking for the impact. They're asking for the impact that would have, both fiscal and facility and so forth. I know that we had at least one response from our director area that I'm aware of, and that was from well, one of the more rural school districts, as to the impact that they would have. And this is a small school district. They would have to hire 3 parapros just to accommodate the extra recess time. And so I'm thinking that one of the outcomes is going to be that they can't afford it. But that has never stopped the legislature before. So we'll see what comes out of that. If any of you have questions about that report that I sent out, please feel free to let me know. And there was some information in there about the special ed, some of the special ed bills that are out there roaming around in the halls of Olympia. So,
Thank you, Martha. Anybody else? Yes, I do have a couple things. One is just going following Martha's lead there on the ledge session. I think there was 3 bills that were of particular interest to me that were in committee today. And one was at House Bill 1071, which was a bill to direct OSPI superintendent to provide funds for one replacement of one SRO in each school district. So money type issue, but it was interesting that there was a lot of strong opposition, and the opposition claimed that SROs are harmful to students of color. So I didn't get a chance to kind of get more into that, but that was an interesting reason for not wanting SROs in schools. So I don't know, Martha, you heard about that deal, and then also the other one that was in committee was to limit the use. This is why OSPI superintendent limit the use of isolation and restraint procedures. So it sounds like that might be an issue in some school districts. And then also the third one that I saw was to adapt curricula that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive. So those are three bills that we're in committee today actually, and come my attention. So I just wanted to bring those up. My final thing is that just wanted to apprise the board that I was appointed to the WASDA Annual Conference Advisory Committee. So we'll be a meeting here on the 8th to talk about ideas for our next year's annual conference. I think it's going to be held in Beverly. So I just wanted to let the board know that work as well. Thank you. Thank you for representing us on that committee. Anybody else have comments or questions? Thank you. Moving on, we have our superintendent's update. Dr.
Thank you, President Walker, and members of the board. First, I would like to report that this weekend I was able to attend the funeral of Angel Camacho, being there for his family and his siblings. I think it was really impressive the way that the school rallied around Maria, his mother, and the family. I'm very proud of the staff from Washington, Davis, and Adams, who were not only there at the funeral service, but also before the viewing at the graveside, prepping for the luncheon that was after the burial. I stopped by Adams to check in on the 2 youngest today. They're not yet back, so they're scheduled to return tomorrow. But very impressive, and to really see that the primary organization was mentioned for the family and recognized was the school district in support of the family. So just something I wanted to share with you. On a brighter note, I was able to attend 3 different buildings this last week, Miami Tech, McClure, and then McKinley today. So I would like to share probably the happiest moment of my week, which was starting out in Sarah Coyer's kinder class this morning. A young man came up and evidently he's the self-designated greeter. Gave me a wonderful hug this morning, which does not happen too frequently. but also then going to Cindy Rademacher's class, who's a phenomenal, just dual language teacher. And so a hard time. She recently got married, I think, with Potato before, but just a wonderful teacher. And I was in the class, and before I walked out, I was sharing in Spanish with the class, Spanish-speaking dual language, and we have some English speakers in there that are like just phenomenal progress. And I was asking them if they had a superpower, and identified that their superpower was bilingual, and they mentioned that, yes, we speak Spanish, we speak English. There was a young man that put his hand up and he said, I speak French. And I said, really? And he goes, ratatouille. Somebody was evidently watching Disney and is now trilingual. So we've got some incredible things happening over in our elementary schools with the dual language program, including a trilingual individual learning on his own, it seems. Aside from this short report on what's happening around the district and the challenging, the sad, and the good, I did want to mention that strategics training still continues. That's ongoing. I was able to attend the training this last week. I'm very pleased with the work that led by Assistant Superintendent Locke and Sarah Cornell, led the opinion. I did a wonderful job instructing and modifying as we learn more about the strategic system regarding safety, another layer of safety. Not something that we put all our eggs in one basket, so to speak, but just another layer. I continue to meet with Bob Harrison, the city manager, so we are continue to foster that relationship with our city. We do have verbal confirmation that if we do pursue any bond or levy, which levy is not a doubt, but when we do that, according to the verbal conversation, we're looking to get something from the city at the same time, which is very helpful. Other item I think I would just share is what I did learn in the elementary today, and this is the last thing on my agenda, is that we are 6 days away from the 100th day of school. And I was a secondary school teacher, which middle school, high school, and the 100th day of school was another day of school for me throughout my entire career. Did not mean anything to me until I became a superintendent that was actually in elementary school on the 100th day. So for those of you that don't know, the 100th day is just a massive celebration, recognition, acknowledgement of where our elementary students are in the process. And I think it really speaks to the level of intentionality of our staff in recognizing that not only that day, but every moment counts with our kids. So I didn't want to call that to your attention. If you have any desire to get into a building in the next week, I would recommend we make arrangements to do so on that 100th day. I think it would be very impressive if you so chose to drop by during that time. I have no other items to report at this time. I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Maybe that's a celebration that middle and high schools ought to take out as well.
You should, absolutely. And you know what? Just because I didn't acknowledge it doesn't mean others did. So I'm looking over there, Heather.
It's great. I didn't know about it until I have my own children.
We just miss it in the secondary level. We have no. Yeah.
I like the idea.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee. Next up, we have bond and levy informational session with Corey Plager. Would you like to introduce our guest?
Thank you, President Walker. I'd be happy to. Corey Plager, a longtime it's a PowerPoint support person, individual partner, I should say, to the Yakima School District. Corey is the Senior Vice President. Am I going to share? No audio. The G.A. Davidson Company. They are nationally recognized for research, capital marketing, investment banking expertise, and full service investments. Corey and the company in which he works does represent over 100 school districts, I believe, out of the 209 in the state. And he traveled here from Spokane. Thank you very much for making arrangements to be here today. He met with me this afternoon alongside John Kavanaugh, the president of the Yakima Education Association, and then afterwards met with our chief communications officer, Christian Finner, and myself. And I just had a wonderful opportunity to vision what is possible in the district and how it meshes with the work that's happening with people, which will be a report out this next week. And we do have a receipt back meeting on Wednesday. With that, I would ask that Corey go ahead and present some bond and levy information here to the board. So we do not assume that all of this bond and levy knowledge is something that each person possesses. So we do like to take advantage well in advance of an opportunity to hopefully answer any questions that you would have around a levy and a bond and where we're positioned here in the Yakima Valley. So with that, again, thank you, Corey. The time is yours.
Great, thank you for the invitation. It's great to see some familiar faces as I've been here presenting in the past and a couple new ones. I'm part of the team of many that support the school district bonds and levies. And if you recall, I worked at the Educational Service District for 15 years before joining D.A. Davidson. I welcome any questions as I go through the materials. And as there's just two topics we're going to talk about. They're kind of wide in depth in topic, and it's a levy and bond overview. Every 4 years, the levy is very top of mind. And while you may be getting public opinion throughout that period of time, you only have to ask the voters to approve it at this given time coming up in 2024. While I have your attention, we're also going to share an update on property taxes and levies. If you have neighbors and you might have seen your property tax statements, it's a very hot topic way beyond. What is the impact on property values on school taxes in the next period? So those are the two pieces we're going to talk about today.
Downloads.
And I can go ahead and just keep going. I think you may have a copy of the presentation for you. There's just slight changes, but to not waste any time here. The two points we're going to talk about today are education program and operations levies. They can be run from 1 to 4 years. Yes, some school districts run 1-year levies. They do this every year. It's incredible. They consider it a report card. So they do it annually. You can do it as much as 4 years. The last levy was approved in February of 2020, and it's ready to be renewed in 24. And bonds vary. 20 years is the most common for bonds. The last bond passed in Yakima School District was in May of 2009, $114 million. It's a firm presentation, but you will see here. On slide 4, this is the elevator speech about what an education levy is, should you want to explain it to one of your neighbors or peers in a minute. And an education program and operations levy is formerly known as an M&O levy, maintenance and operations levy. We used to call them that, which was a good term. However, when school districts started passing capital levies or technology levies, they started to get muddled. Because the majority of what your levy is for is to support the classroom and not necessarily for custodial or maintenance or carpet replacement. So the program is to support school districts for unfunded teachers, nurses, special education, shortages in food service and transportation. Now, the state will say that this is for enrichment. And I put that in quotation marks because I still feel to this day that many of us don't believe that education is fully funded or amply funded. However, if you're looking for a definition of what a levy is, in the RCWs, you must look for the word enrichment to find where the levy language is for school districts. You are subject to levy limit laws, which means you can't collect whatever you prefer. You are subject to $2.50 of your assessed valuation base or $2,500 per pupil adjusted by inflation. I will make one comment here is that you are limited to $2.50 per pupil. That is your lesser of those two formulas. Anytime there's a lesser formula, that usually means there's probably equity issues across the state. Some are getting more than others. I will point out that school districts across the state, some are collecting $2,988 per student. At this time, your levy collects $990 per student. However, you are getting about over $1,000 in local effort assistant matching. With that matching per se, you are still receiving just a little bit over 2/3 of what many school districts were receiving across the state in more property-rich areas. So this is a very common problem. I used to research local effort assistance and its shortfalls across the state, and we're noticing more and more school districts not eligible for as much local effort assistance as previously funded. And that has been a topic I know WASDA, especially as of recent sessions. Levy and bond overview here is their simple majority for levies, and that is in general fund or the capital fund.
and no validation is required. It does not matter how many voters show up. You just need those that did show up, 50% plus one. And it's based on the calendar year, not the fiscal year, and you have 2 attempts to pass a levy. Now, this is a chart that shows we only work in Washington schools in my office here, Washington State School Districts, and this shows the passage success rate for school levies for an education program levy since 2000. Well, you'll notice there's a green line when simple majority was put into play, and since then we only need 50% plus one, and we've been cruising along 97, 98% success rate until McCleary was adopted. In 2017 and 18, you'll start to notice a little dip and then further. And we don't have the exact data on why, but we can attribute that to is local media across the state. Olympia mentioned that you are now fully funded. So to ask for a school levy in a time when you were being fully funded, in a time that coincidentally added a state schools tax increase, it's been a little bit more challenging. And then you add the 1-2 punch of the results of the pandemic and the polarizing nature that school boards and school districts have put themselves in the middle of this battle instead of that maybe should be an Olympia. So one thing too is in 2022, 18 school districts failed the first attempt. This is not me trying to come to the board meeting and say this is doom and gloom, other than it's a very great opportunity to actually change some of the communication methods and look at how we can improve this process, because it's very difficult now to pass a levy. In this past years, it was 97, 98% success rate. Another hurdle to overcome is in the general election just recently, Yakima County had the lowest turnout for all 39 counties at 49.78%. These levies are difficult. There are 3 school districts that had double levy failures. So all those 18 that failed their first attempt, 15 passed their second attempt. They're only getting 2 chances. But districts like Kennewick, Marysville, and Finley will not get local resources in this 2023 calendar year, and that could be up to 10-12% of a school district budget. So you have had excellent support of your EP&O history dating back to 2000. You'll notice as high as 67%, but a majority of your elections for EP&O levies received over 60%, excluding the one right after the clearing. We noticed those same challenges with enrichment levy definitions and the increase in the state schools tax. So this shows a very high support of your education levies to pass. On average, it takes 3 attempts to pass a bond, and Yakima is no exception to that rule. On average, school bonds pass about 44-45% of the time. So the elevator speech on a school bond. Security is issued by local governments, whether this could be a city, county, sewer district, park district. We're no different. We are able to borrow at tax-exempt interest rates. That means school districts can borrow at rates cheaper than Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing as they're trying to do construction facilities. Bondholders, people that are investing in these bonds on your behalf, are repaid with property taxes from your assessment region. And it is unfortunately necessary to have 60% approval to pass a school bond in our state. And in addition to the 60% rule, you must have a certain number of voters show up for validation. So at the end of the election, they will look and see if you have received at least 40% of the voters that showed up in the general election in the prior year. So you can see how that could be a challenge after a presidential election or midterm when turnout could be higher in November. Each bond structure is customized to each school district. You cannot go over 5% of your assessed valuation base from a perspective of how much you can ask the voters to approve. And just recently, over the last 2 years, the school district has refunded their existing bonds that were out that are available for refunding and saved taxpayers over $8.7 million that will take advantage of the rest of the term of the bonds. While levies have historically been at 97, 98%, bonds I mentioned to you pass about 45% of the time. One thing you'll notice is in 2022, only 21% of the bonds passed. 4 bonds. 3 of those were in King County, and the other one was Bellingham. So it has been a very difficult process since the pandemic for schools outside of the King County region or along the I-5 corridor. Over the last 10 years, I mentioned that the 46% is the average passage rate. In Yakima County, you are no different. 44% is the average of any school bond asked for in the last 10 years within this geographic area. So some people ask, are we unique? In Washington State, I would say unique, but we're one of a minority of about 7 or 8 states that require 60% supermajority. What you'll notice is that we're the only supermajority district on either coast. And one thing that I will note is it's easier to raise funding for a high school football stadium in Texas than it is for an elementary school in Washington State. And I've been in Texas. They have some really nice stadiums. I like football as well. So at least we are not Missouri. I don't know who did the math there, 4/7. If I can do that really quick, there's probably a math teacher there somewhere. But we are still 60%. California is one of the only states at 55%. Compromise between the 50% simple majority and 60% supermajority. And I believe there's legislation currently enacted that will bring that down to 50% as well. Some other considerations as a school district is considering a bond is, when do existing bonds mature? The district has 4 outstanding bonds ranging from 2010 to 2022 refunded bonds that will begin to mature and cycle up between 2028 and 2032. Each time the school district does issue bonds, bond rating always comes into play. And lastly, construction inflation. This has been one of the hottest topics for the last 2 years, as the global pandemic has put so many challenges on the supply chain and labor, and inflation has gone at a very rapid pace in the school construction world. So when is the best time to submit a proposition to the voters? You have 4 opportunities. There's only 4 elections. We used to have 6, 7, 8 different times of the year you can run an election. Now it is February. Let's see here. February, April, August, and November. You may notice February is the strongest month for an EP&O levy, a capital levy, or a bond. That has been customarily the school district election. Some school districts have been going in November, but for the most part, we have, I believe, 40-something school districts on this February ballot, and only a couple have chosen to do either April or November that are on the outstanding for 2023. You may notice August is a very difficult time. One of the most successful factors in passing a levy, of course, is teachers. And they have a much deserved break over the summer and aren't interested in most likely helping pass a school levy while they're regrouping and having vacation and doing professional development. So August has been a very difficult time for schools, but February is kind of the gold standard. We also get the question, should I run multiple propositions? Before simple majority for EP&O levies, districts didn't frequently run bonds with an EP&O levy. They ran them separately. The EP&O levy is so important, of course. And since 2008, we've seen it much more frequently. And I did a study to try to have a little more of a focus on the present. And so I did since 2015 to today, what are the different percentages of when you run a bond alone, which is 46.5% approval since 2015, to running it with EP&O at the same time. And that's approval 52.7%. It's hard to argue that putting multiple things together and asking for more than less is actually more successful. But we believe with the communications teams is that instead of more frequent asking of approval, combining it together with a more long-range plan has been one of the reasons that that's been more successful. It's not a huge number increase. It's not a huge bump. Or we're talking 6%. So you have to ask yourself too, is this what the community would request? What's the community asking for? So while there is some statistical evidence that says putting things together is beneficial, of course, always being the boots on the ground instead of relying on statistics is always important. So why are we talking so early? One is, while the election does not have to be renewed, the ballot does not have to be renewed until 2024, time flies. And if you look at this page here, we'll show you if you're running an election in February of 2024, that's the month you choose. The resolution filing deadline is December, which means the board is most likely adopting in November, coming up with a plan at the latest by October to adopt in November. And you look, and we're just a few months from that. So it's such a great time to visit now while we're in between things, because we know that over the summer, there's going to be so many other challenges. So this week, that would be a great time to just revisit what is a levy, what is a bond, and some of the guidance around that. I also like to share the information on January 26th. That's the approximate date the ballots are mailed. maybe some people, of course, in the community that don't teach in a school district, have a kid in a school district or a grandkid or work, and that's the date that they may receive their ballots. So another great time to kind of meet that informationally. So that's a bond overview. I'll go briefly over property values and school taxes. This is the history of Yakima School District's assessed valuation. What you'll notice, it was very level for many years until 2 or 3 years ago, we see skyrocketed property values. In 2023 alone, the district jumped 17% in assessed valuation up to $7.7 billion. One thing to keep in mind is, of that number, over 76 million was new construction. But that's a good thing to keep in mind when we talk about the impact of each individual taxpayer. With 76 million in new construction, those are new people moving to the community, new businesses or new homes that will help offset some of the increases on other taxation measures. Something we hear quite frequently is the taxes are going higher and higher every year. While this is not an exemption to that case, you can see that they're going up at a very slow rate. So this is the EP&O levy history of Yakima School District. Well, you'll notice, I think this is what I like to call an inflationary model. You don't see a stair-step model where it comes up every 4 years. It's been just slow and steady increases. So you may hear in the community that taxes have skyrocketed. Well, in this case here, they've been very level and just slowly increasing with inflation over the years. I'll also point out in 2023, which numbers are just coming out from the county, the levy lid is approximately 19.4 million, and the district will be collecting 16 million even. You're still almost 3.5 million underneath the levy lid. So another talking point with the community members as well. So when we take into consideration your tax base and what the district has been asking for in 23, what you'll notice is a pretty solid decrease in the tax rates. And we're actually in our 4th consecutive year of decreases since McCleary was put into action. On this slide, you'll notice in green are the education program and operation levy taxes, and in tan are the school bond taxes. The school bond, once approved, have set principal and interest payments for the history of those bonds. The district cannot collect more just because property values go up. So one of the results from that is you'll notice that the tax rates have been declining steadily on your school bonds anytime assessed valuation exceeds estimates. School bond in 2023 is projected by the county to be $1.03, while just 5 years ago it was almost $1.50. But that rate will continue to decline as assessed valuations increase faster than average. Now, we'd be amiss to not mention the state schools tax. I mentioned to you why it was harder to pass a levy on one of the previous slides. And one of the reasons is the timing of the state McCleary increase. This is the same slide that I just showed you, but instead of just focusing on the taxes that the school board and the school leadership team have an impact on, I added over the top in gray the state schools tax. The state schools tax has been around as far back as I could research, and those are resources that go from every taxpayer to Olympia to be put in the blender to be paid out for special education, apportionment, transportation. But they added a brand new state schools tax in 2018. And they did that, and that's when everybody in the state felt the tax rate spike, depending on other taxes. But you'll see it here as well, that the community members did pay an increase in 18. That's when we started to see a little bit different level of support for school levies start. Now it since has settled down. So you'll notice that the state schools tax is also limited to 1% revenue growth. So as communities and economies and assessed valuations boom, those rates are also dropping as well. So you may hear your neighbors say our property values went up 17%, our taxes will go up 17%. That's really dependent on a lot of factors, but you'll notice that increase, if that is true, it might not be because of Yakima School District taxes. Those have come down systematically over the last few years. We'd like to do a revisit. Anytime we're moving forward or looking forward to a future levy, how do we do in the past? And what this is a review of the state's or the EP&O ballot proposition, what you asked voters to approve, what was actually paid by the taxpayers. You'll notice that they've been very, very close to each other for many years, but since 2017, the district has overestimated the tax impact of the voters, and the voters have received a tax bill with a rate less than that they approved. You'll notice in 2023 alone, the estimate was $2.50. The actual rate should be $2.07 once the county locks in those final numbers. Another result of assessed valuation gains. And I'll conclude with this final slide that just shows your peers. I think Yakima School District in 2023 is slated to be the 10th tax rate out of the school districts to have any voter within the county. And this is just for comparison purposes for your records to see what all your neighbors' EP&O rates are, bond rates, and capital levy rates if they have them. I welcome any questions you may have.
I'm just trying to understand this because there's some other things that are going on. You know, I'm noticing and we have a real estate professional here next to me, but it seems like that the property values have increased significantly in the last 2 years. So have taxes, right? But I'm seeing a gradual decrease in the value of homes right now. 10,000, 15. I mean, we're seeing that. So I'm not sure how it works with the taxes. Once we get our tax rate from the county, is that for the whole year? Right. Well, if that's the case, then I can see people saying, "Hey, my house is not valued at that rate anymore." So I'm just kind of wondering about that. Interest rates as well. So I'm trying to get the big picture here. Interest rates where there are, so not many people are happy about that. And then just the, I think we call it the post-pandemic effect. You know, in our community, there was some differences in whatever ideology, whatever thoughts, opinions about whether school should be in person or remote, right? And that whole debate. And you know, now some people are saying, well, we had sent our kids to school, they should have been in school. Now look at the result of that. But why we're not continuing to invest? You know, we're not seeing the results in student academic achievement. So I'm just trying to see if if that's something that you're thinking about or something I should be worried about, or just trying to get the big picture, more, you know, even a bigger picture of the situation.
So I'll start with the first question about taxes for the year. They are set at a point in time in which the county locks down your value at a certain point in time and you're taxed for that entire year. We are noticing realtor values throughout the state are starting to slow down or decrease to some extent. The question will be will assessed value decrease? Because many homes are still not quite at their market value as in their assessed value of the county. So will assessed values level off, or will they see a mirror what we're seeing in the real estate market? And so that's still wait and see. The second question, inflation. You know, we do a lot of analysis on school levies and school bonds and the impact of inflation or the stock market on those. And what we'll notice is the biggest factor will be gas prices. When gas prices are high, it instantly hits folks. And that was one of the biggest challenges that we saw in February of 22 as gas prices spiked immensely, and just a bad timing for school districts asking for levies. And thirdly, I do agree that we're seeing, I've heard somebody say healing. We're having some healing happen with certain taxpayers as they're getting back to this post-pandemic world. And we'll have 8 bonds on the school ballot and 40 levies on this ballot this February. And it's always a great measure to see how are we doing as a school community statewide. Are we starting to see people, understand how you're going out of this post-pandemic for their students? And so I think a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for the school district running bonds, because we went a whole year where there wasn't one bond attempted in the entire state, which is the first.
And then one thing that I forgot to mention is that the ESSER funds, right? So a lot of people don't really understand the ESSER funds, how they're to be used and so forth. So they're thinking the school district got so many millions to end the budget. So, I'm not sure what we can do about that to educate our community about ESSER funds and the purpose for those.
Well, I think I would, in responding to that question, I think that was the purpose then of the second meeting that we had today with our Chief Communication Officer, in how we communicate what we've done with the funding and how it was utilized across the system and being only a one-time access. So as you know, here in the Yakima School District, we have 3 legislative priorities, and one of those priorities is to seek that extended funding now that ESSER cliff is right around the corner. And I think you bring up a really good point, Director Navarro. I had a couple of conversations in the last week around with Westside superintendents and school board members, and without mentioning the size of the districts, or actually the names of the districts. I'll mention the size. We're looking around probably around 10,000 to 11,000 students. Both of the districts, one north of Seattle, one south of Seattle, are looking at deficits or cuts for next year around 12 to 15 million. And the Yakima School District, we've been very prudent, and we were fortunate to have the ESSER funding that we did. And we did not lay off one single person. We were able to upgrade effectively around safety for our students and our staff and our community. We can talk about the food services that we provided way back when the pandemic started. Moving to one-on-one technology. We've got the auditorium that dipped into our funding that we didn't have set aside. So I think that there's a narrative that we can engage with the community on to explain the opportunities that we benefited from in ESSER and how those will continue. I do think you bring up a good point, especially as I look at our neighbors across the state, the challenges that they have, and we have to just be very careful moving forward to make sure that we continue to be very transparent and prudent with the funding that we receive. I don't know if you have any additional comments.
No, I have seen as I travel the state that many districts are struggling with budget cuts and looking forward to the ESSER clip is what we're calling it. But I think there's a lot of information presented tonight in these two stages. What is a levy, what is a bond, and then your detailed statistics on property values and tax rates, but really trying to set the stage. I believe this still is rather early to be discussing this model. So I think there is time to absorb and revisit. Hopefully that putting this information in front of you early will make it a little less painful as we move forward with this strategy in the future.
Well, I'm hearing from school directors across the state that are receiving LEA funds, so local assistance, right? That their LEA money is decreasing next year because of the increases in property valuation in their community. Are you seeing that as well?
Yes, we present annually at the Association of School Business Officials Conference regarding local effort assistance as one of our topics. And McCleary changed the formulas completely in 2019 to be a per pupil based formula unit. So very small school districts or schools with declining enrollment are negatively impacted. Larger school districts with a bigger tax base were more positively impacted. But the number one reason that LEA is going down for school districts is the LEA model is set to grow by inflation, by CPI. And that number this year, I believe, was around 8 to 9%. And Yakima School District, for example, went up to 17%. Anytime your tax base grows faster than the CPI, then your funding will decrease. And so we're noticing it's across the state. My property values went up 31%. Spokane County was a 32% average. I believe Snohomish, Pierce, Thurston in the high 20s. We're having just enormous growth across the state. Anytime a school district grew faster than inflation, not eligible, and they're deemed property rich now because their AV grew faster than inflation. So it has been a problem, and I think we've had 30 school districts that are disappear eventually. So it's something that many school districts are starting to plan for to not have that.
First of all, Corey. I'd love to hear about it for anybody in a real estate scenario. Could you repeat some of the stats you just indicated about or mentioned for this coming year? You said, correct me if I'm wrong, something like 40 different levies and bonds are going to be run in the state. And then do you have an idea, or most of those all in the February month?
Exactly. So, in 2023, we track all the schools in the state that we think need rent levy. We keep an eye on them just in case they forget, right? And so we forecast there's approximately 40 to 45 school districts that are on the schedule that need to renew their levy in 2023. And we saw all of them, but 2 of them are on the February ballot. The other 2 will be in April or November. So they are the regularly scheduled EP&O replacement levy situation. Of the 295 schools in the state, all but 7 have levies right now. And those 7 that do not are the smallest schools in the state, like Stehekin or Starbuck, for example. There's a school district named Starbuck in our state. I'll take your word for it. And then there are 8 school loans, and then a handful of capital levies, maybe 10 capital levies as well. So this is a down cycle. On any given year, every other year, we'll have 150 schools on cycle to run their levy. But this year is a little bit of a smaller sample size, but a month or a few weeks from today, we'll get a really good vision of how the schools did.
That's my biggest point to the question, is because if we're looking at what has happened lately, and most of those small numbers we were talking about were passed, and then and if we have that sort of an indicator that early, though, I think that's an awful lot. We got a pretty close levy that's not to be very
And then not having it close, there is districts, even along the I-5 corridor, historically deep high 60, low 70% that also had close cases post-nuclear. So it is. There are different challenges along the I-5 corridor in King County. It's still very difficult to pass measures statewide, but we'll get a really good pulse if everything because those 40 levies and those 8 bonds and those 10 capital levies are statewide. So we'll see little different geographic areas that are from.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you so much. It's very informative, and I don't understand all of it myself yet, but I have homework to do. But I really appreciate the depth and breadth of your presentation. Thank you. Next up, we have comments from the public on agenda items. Do we have any requests for comment?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We have the assignment and determination of lease agreement between the Port of Sunnyside and Yakima School District. It's quite intense.
Thank you. This evening, I'm asking the board to authorize the superintendent to sign an assignment of a ground lease. And then in the same document, it would provide for termination of that same lease. Let me explain the background so you know what I'm talking about here. Back in 2012, a coalition of school districts got together and decided that it would make sense to have a satellite skill center in the Sunnyside area because Yakima School District already operated YV Tech as a skill center. It made sense for Yakima School District to be the host district. So in order to set up that location in Sunnyside, you had to find some ground to serve as a place to situate the new building. So we entered into a land lease with the Port of Sunnyside. And at that time, there was some efforts by the coalition to gain funding to build the structure, and there was a structure built there. I think I'm sorry about that, but basically it wasn't serving students to the extent that it should have been. There was an increased enrollment, and there were some other factors that just made sense not to continue to operate it. So the coalition decided to dissolve that location. Now, in order to do that, you have to get OSPI's approval. So since this summer, we've been working to try to get OSPI to provide us with approval. And at the same time, the $6 million that was used to build that structure, we were concerned that there might be some strings attached to that funding that would have to be paid back if we close the facility after only 10 years. So finally got those answers to us. OSPI gave us approval, and there is no requirement to pay the money back. So now we're at the point of figuring out how this works mechanically. because the building is in Sunnyside and situated in the Sunnyside School District, the regulations that OSPI provides indicates that building by operation of law goes to the Sunnyside School District. So the ground lease we have is between Yakima School District and Port Sunnyside. So we need to assign that to the Sunnyside School District, which this document does. And then the next part of the puzzle is, well, in order to get rid of the building, there's a provision in the lease agreement itself that says if the lease is ever terminated and the facility is no longer used as a skill center, then the building would go to the property owner, part of Sunnyside. So that's the termination part of the agreement as well. So we're asking to have the assignment done to Sunnyside School District takes over the building, and then agree to the termination of the lease. That way, the port gets the building. My understanding, superintendent can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that the port then desires to let Terry Tech use the facility for their purposes. That's where we are. So I'm asking that the board approve that and authorize the superintendent to sign the document. Thank you.
May I add a few things? So this is very intricate, kind of hard to follow. And thank you, Bob, for doing a very good job. This has been in the works for well over a year. I think what's also important to share with the board is at the time, Senator Jim Honeyford was instrumental in securing the state funding for the satellite, specifically in Sunnyside. I'm not privy to all of the inner workings, but my understanding is that there was some constituents in that area that were very excited and wanted to have that satellite facility. That satellite facility never fully took hold over the years and has been very difficult to maintain. Obviously, we have our main campus here in our school district, and that satellite was supposed to house multiple programs and just has not been able to gain traction in the Sunnyside School District. So a couple of years ago then, I believe it's been a couple of years now, Senator Honeyford came and reached out to me regarding this entire process of then turning it back over to the Sunnyside School District. And we have been working through the challenges of how to make this happen ever since. Because we actually do not have that satellite as a self-sustaining program. So we have been pouring money into that facility to keep it running as an individual satellite for a small scale program. And so this would then allow for it to be, as Bob described, turned over to the Sunnyside School District and then back to the port of Sunnyside, and then they will do with it what they will, which Bob has shared what we believe the plans to be. That gives a little bit more political background. This was not something that we recognize that we were losing money in running that program. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get out from under that challenge and to become more solvent. And I think that this was a political opportunity that never fully came to full fruition with Senator King and the constituents in the Sunnyside area. And as it stands now, we do have the solution remedied through Bob's work with OSPI in conjunction with the Sunnyside School District and Port of Sunnyside. And please, if you have any questions, we know that this is a little bit of a challenging request to follow, and we want it to be as clear as we can make it.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, do I hear a motion from the board?
I move that the board of directors approve of and authorize the superintendent to sign an assignment and termination of lease agreement in July 1, 2012 between the Port of Sunnyside and the Yakima School District number 7, Wiley's Tech Skills Center.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the assignment and termination of the lease agreement. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett?
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva?
Aye.
And President Walker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And now we have our second opportunity for public comment. Are there any requests for public comment?
There are none.
Thank you. Moving on, we have the approval discussion of board reading reports, starting with policy 1000.310. Summary. Looks like board members are responding to the survey on agreement that the board is compliant. Do I hear a motion from the board to accept this report?
So. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the survey report on 1000.3.0 Global Governance Committee. You want to call the roll?
Director Beckett?
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva?
Aye.
And President Walker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Next up is policy number 1000.3.1. It appears that all the board members have voted. We have several instances of progress being made toward compliance or partial compliance. The majority full compliance. So, are there any comments or discussion?
I have some comments in there for like three, comment number one is fine. In our meeting, our last meeting, we talked about, moving the term controversial. I think that makes sense to do that. It verifies, can help clarify that policy. Controversial can be it, individual interpretation. There's also discussion about removing the no surprises in our policy, as for keeping no surprises in the policy. But that wording, it's clear that any topic can be discussed. The policy outlines how to add a topic to the agenda or how to bring the agenda item up. Avoiding surprises helps maintain the respectfully we're on the part and informed. Avoiding surprises as opposed to really trust me.
Excuse me, Russell, but I have a hard time hearing you. Can you move the mic a little closer?
Oh, sure. I essentially just read my comment there. Comment number one on page 9 of this policy. So agree that we should remove the term controversial and think that we should keep the no surprises word in our policies in this policy.
I believe in my comments I provided a rewording of 4.3. Does that show on the?
There might be individuals for
If you look on page 10 of the compiled document, comment number 3, I think is maybe yours.
Yeah, I do that. Okay. So with that section, you can see I have a very lengthy response or comment, but let me see, where do I start? So I do have some difficulty with also that stuff. If there's any surprises or any wishes or controversial issues, I know it would be controversial to discuss it with the board chair. So, I looked at the Open Public Meetings Act, and I would suggest we go to that, the language there, and perhaps rewrite this section to reflect that. But it was interesting how it said here, and it could all be just terms that if an individual board member has a surprise or topic or anything they want to bring before the board, that they're to work with the president and the superintendent to place that matter of concern on the agenda, not to discuss it. And for me, it goes back to what the OPMA states about informed consent or informed trust, right? That conversations or discussions on topics shouldn't be happening. They should be happening in open public meetings. So that's where I have that concern. So I can see where if there is a topic or an item that a board member wants to discuss and not to surprise the board or the superintendent, then what I'm understanding is that the board member should go to the president and say, hey, this is an item or a topic I wish to discuss, and have that item placed on the agenda, and not to have perhaps just to explain it and not to have a full discussion on it. And so part of this is just procedure. So that's the first part. If somebody wants to bring up a so-called surprise item or whatever, a surprise to the board, they could do it that way. And if for some reason the board president decides not to grant the request, then it also states that the board or the board member would bring it up in the meeting and ask for action to be taken on that, to add that to the agenda. So I'm just wondering if somehow we can outline that procedure, or do we need to within our own policy? So for me, it's a fine line where we don't want surprises, but also we want to maintain that informed trust with our community. And again, I really don't like to engage in discussions in private. I would have all school business out in open public meetings. So that's my comment on 3.3. I think sometimes we read that interpretation as though somehow it's like getting permission to bring up the topic, and I don't read it that way. I read it as just not, if a topic has the potential to be really sensitive, controversial to the community, is to allow any data or research around that topic to be gathered before introducing it, not to stop the introduction of any topic, but then any topic is worthy of discussion. But then it gives the staff time to gather how that topic is dealt with in history and gather information around the topic. That's kind of the thing about no surprises. We just don't want to spring things on ourselves in public without preparation to do it. That's kind of my opinion.
We also need to be careful about this particular comment says that you can use parliamentary procedure to add something to an agenda. We are a publicly elected board, and as such, we're required to follow the state rules about agenda notice. and how much notice you have to give the public for your agenda and for your agenda items. So, although Robert is something that people follow in general, they are overridden by state law, state rules and regs. So you can't just spring something on the board by changing the agenda at the last minute without falling prey to being contrary to state law. So I think there is certainly value in someone who wants to bring an issue or topic or whatever to the board's agenda, to bring that information to the board president and the superintendent, because they're the ones that set the agenda. And you wouldn't run afoul of OPMA by just having the board president and a board member and the superintendent having a discussion about it. The only way you run afoul of that is if you've got 3 board members having that discussion, because then you're violating OPMA. But just having 2 board members doesn't violate OPMA.
So Martha, that statement you just made is directly from the OPMA document.
What's that?
That and it says right there in the middle of my comment that if a board member wishes to have something addressed on the agenda, that the board president included the board member, they move in, again, I don't need to read the whole thing, but that's straight from the act itself. That's, maybe you don't see my quotation marks there, but that came from there. But that's more of a, maybe that's a legal issue or we can look into, but I've been on boards where you can actually change your agenda, add to it or change it, and we do that as well sometimes. So that is part of that. And then for me, I know we don't ever violate this act, right? The OPMA, but I am concerned about informed trust and having that with our community, and I try to limit those discussions, even if just with the president or just 2 board members. So again, I'm just that was my point, is about the informed consent, even though I know we don't violate this policy.
I really appreciated reading the comments actually for all 4 of these. I know we had kind of a short period of time this week with having them in board docs. I may have been the last one to submit them, so that might be partially my fault. So I apologize, but I really appreciated the comments. I think the thing that struck me is that I don't think we're necessarily really on different pages here. I think we just have some different ways of looking at some of the language and some of just the theory behind how much discussion outside of the harsh light of day is appropriate versus more. I don't feel like our structure and the Meetings Act are necessarily mutually exclusive in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was just something we needed to have a better handle on as far as what is acceptable and what isn't. I don't know if the policy actually needs any language changes or not. I know there were a few that had been mentioned in the comments. I'm certainly open-minded to some of the things that Director Villanueva brought up. But overall, I would have to say that I was very pleasantly surprised to read everyone's comments and see a little bit more insight into the way everyone is approaching these particular policies.
So are you seeing a need for a change in any of the policies, or this question I have is, are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist? I'm not sure that there's ever been an effort to squelch a topic or not a topic on the agenda that has been requested by the listener. So we solve a problem, we don't have. Or I'm also not aware of any time where we're in the discussion of creating an agenda, something has been left off because it's been discussed in the agenda plan. That's not occurred in my experience. It's all kind of classic. Essentially functioning okay with this policy.
And I would have to say we're not trying to solve any issues or problems. We're just trying to enhance. For me, the part of the process of reviewing our reports or policies is just to enhance.
Sure.
And and for me personally, every year I learn something new. I understand something better or whatever. And reviewing these policies year after year, I kind of pick up on different things, and so it's just a learning process. And for me, it's just trying to improve, and then also understand, because I've never, all the years on the board, I never knew that I can go to the board president and ask for it. And I didn't, I know that was a process, so now I do. So I guess for that section, I don't see a need as long as I understand the process now. That's good for me. I do have. In that section, let's see, what was it? The first, number 1, about will not use expertise of individual board members. I just think that much of our policies are written in the negative format. And the fact is, we do oftentimes rely on each other for expertise, whatever that may be. And I do consider that, so I don't know if we should change that at all. But I offered a suggestion there. And then I rated the board as being partially compliant on, I forget what section, but it had to do with being proactive rather than reactive. And lately, and also throughout the year, I felt pressured. I felt, that kind of rush to complete monitoring reports. And so I'm just wondering, is there a better way where we can process those monitoring reports rather than having, sometimes we have 2 days to fill out or to complete a survey. And so I just need sometimes a little bit more time, especially when it comes to the end statement reports. I just need more time to process and think about that, and so I can provide thoughtful responses. And then I'm not going to talk about my other, but there's also one last section, and I like to see part of the sentence removed, and that is, I think it's 3.6 or 4.6. I think I got my number wrong. Let me see. It has something to do with all board members shall support the decision or action.
So 4.7, support the majority.
Yes, thank you. And so I do understand that supporting the majority, once a decision has been made, and not sabotage. That's all good boardmanship. So we understand that. No second guessing, disagreeably, and so I'm just having trouble understanding. That says here, once the board makes a decision, support the decision and work to make it a good one. So I'm not sure what make it a good one means. I could perhaps interpret that to mean, in order to support it, does that mean I need to change my mind, my opinion, my values, my whatever, right? To make it a good one. So what makes a decision a good one? The fact that the majority voted, right? And the superintendent's on board with that. So I'm just not sure what that means. I'm not sure how to interpret that section. So I would recommend that we remove that section from that sentence. So, how do we determine whether a decision is a good one or not, right? How we going to evaluate that and so forth.
At our last meeting, we talked about making some revisions to pieces of this policy. I guess I would suggest that that we it's getting kind of late in the day, that we each individually provide some language for those pieces that you'd like to see changed, and then have that discussion at a future meeting. Or we could wait until the retreat, which is still several months away, when we go through all of our policies for evaluation at that time. I just don't see us making much progress in this venue at this moment, because we don't have solid language to look at.
Can I get from you then which are the ones that you're seeing the need to rewrite? But that would be 4.3, 4.6, and 4.7. Those three.
Some of the recommendations in the past when a board member has brought up a concern about language in a policy, the board member who brought up that concern takes an initial attempt at revising or rewriting that. So that might be like the same process to go through Director Navarro if he wants to.
Are you able to just provide some suggestions?
Yeah.
So I did for two of them, and the one that I agreed to, which was the no surprises. I mentioned that I was good with that, as long as I understand the process. So what I did for 4.7, I can offer suggestions there. And I recommend that we reword that sentence, or I favor more removing that last part. Yeah, so, and then for the first one, regarding expertise of other board members, I did insert my suggestion there. So I think okay. So I can work on. I'm not sure what else I can do, but I can sure work on whatever changes.
I'd like to see the policy written with living language in the policy. What was in the policy, what the new language is suggested to be, rather than work off of a comment in a policy monitoring survey.
So how do we accomplish that?
Well, in the past, as Graciela indicated, board members wishing to change language in the policy actually got a copy of the policy from staff and put the language, inserted the language into the policy in a red line format so that you see what you had and what is being offered. And then bring that red line policy back to the board for separate action and discussion.
I'll do whatever the board asks. I'm just one board member, so I mean, if the rest of the board disagrees with those suggestions, then we can just move forward and take action on this as well. So, I'm just one board member. I want to. I'm just offering suggestions that I think would improve these policies.
Okay, fine. So what's our next step? Somebody give me some guidance here on it.
I recommend that we move forward with the vote on the policy and Director Navarro wants to edit the policy, you can request a word, an editable version of that policy and edit that. And that can be submitted for reading and have additional discussion there. That's been the process we've used in my time on the board, so. And recommend it.
So is that a motion to accept the policy?
I move to accept this survey.
To accept the survey.
Policy.
So here's a second.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to accept the survey. Why do we want to call the roll?
Director Beckett,
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.
Aye.
Director Rice.
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva.
Aye.
President Walker.
Aye.
That passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you. That leaves us with board job description, 1000.3.2. Again, we have majority of board members saying the board is compliant, and the remainder saying, in some areas, saying the board is making progress. Is there any other comments? The point of order I'm requesting is, is it necessary to, can we just accept the comments, raise the board, move forward, looking for a policy change? Or are we just accepting that there's to do that we're not fully compliant with it, that's a goal?
And historically, part of our process in our self-evaluation is a review of all of the 3.3.x policies, the 1000.3.x, and including those comments as part of the discussion, and that happens at the retreat. And that's where we do most of our planning for next year as well.
So our task for now is to accept the report. If we really wish to alter a policy or change the policy, we work on that. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. We can go through the process as Graciela indicated, where a board member asks for an editable version of the policy, puts in some language and brings it to the board for first reading. But the comments are typically reviewed at the retreat, and to see if those comments change any of the way that we do business or any of the planning that we might make for next year.
Okay, so I guess the question I'm asking is if someone feels that the board is making progress towards compliance, is that necessarily asking for a change in policy or just an observation that we're making progress? Is there a need for a policy change here, or is this acceptable as a report? Can we move forward?
As somebody who has occasionally made a comment about the board making sufficient progress, because I do feel like there are areas we can improve on. Personally, I would feel like we can accept the report and accept remarks, understanding where individual board members are coming from, and getting forward, no problem whatsoever.
And I think I felt like we were moving toward having to readjust the policy because it wasn't 100% compliant. I haven't seen that's not our need to do that. Just need to be aware of the observation.
I don't think it's even realistic to expect all 5 of us to be on the same page all the time.
Sure.
I definitely think it's good for us to understand what we're working with. But I would move that we would accept policy 1000.3.2.
So
moved and seconded to accept the survey on 1000.3.2. Any further questions or discussion? Or do you want to call the roll, please?
Director Beckett.
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr.
Aye.
Director Rice.
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva.
Aye.
President Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. And one last item, 1000.3.3, agenda planning.
One of the comments on a question along those lines, recommending that we align the planning cycle to align the school year and to plan for the change by the superintendent's contract population. contact either with the RP or the policy and make some edits.
Just a comment on changing the contract dates. The reason that we moved from the 1st of July to the 1st of January was because that's when the data is available. We get the CEE data and we get the ends and goals data in like November and December. And then we have time for evaluation and the contract, the change in the dates in the contract. And when we went into July, that was kind of old data by then. And to change the contract dates requires discussion with the superintendent as to whether he's in agreement to have the contract dates changed. Right?
I think I did. I think I used the wrong words. I thought the current policy didn't align maybe not the contract dates, but the performance evaluation date.
Yeah, there's a disagreement. Yes, it was the dates of the contract and the dates that are listed in the policy.
Yes,
So that policy does need to be changed.
Yes, that's what I meant.
I move that we accept the survey for 1043.3.
Second. Moved in second to accept the survey. Do I hear any further discussion or comment? It does appear we do have some more to align the policy practice and prevent this in the future. And again, as I said, getting data in a timely way and being able to process it. And I did have one comment. There was a comment recommending we change the wording in 2.1 to not consult with select community groups. But I think we do have there is community input on the CE survey, not just their parent input there. And staff, maybe not so much outside the community, but there is parent input in NJ that we have every year.
I think it's another definition interpretation.
However, I recall, I know there's more than 2 or 3 board members that expressed a desire or interest to connect more with the community. So, and that's been going on for the last couple of years that I remember. So I'm not sure what our definition is, but there's at least 3 of us that say that we should do this more often. And I don't know if it's reflected in this survey or not. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? We have a motion on the floor. Okay, well,
Director Beckett.
Aye.
Director Navarro Jr. Director Rice.
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva. Aye. President Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Is there a need for executive session?
There is not need for an executive session. I would bring to the attention of the board that there was a request, an appeal request that was made known to me that came to the board. That was not completed within the required time frame. It was declined. There are other circumstances to share, as well as you can always imagine there are many things behind this first blush. So if any board member is interested in knowing more details about the situation, I would be glad to have that conversation. So please reach out to the board if that's the case. Otherwise, I'll require a broad overview before the end of the week to hopefully answer some of the questions that you might have. If you need a more detailed response, then please reach out to Barb and we'll make sure that that happens.
Okay, I just have one question now. The letter did come to the board, and you will be providing a written response to the complainant. Is it also necessary for you to write a response to them?
There is not any, the response has already been sent, it has already been sent to the individual. So if you choose to follow up, we'd be happy to help in that, but otherwise you could just respond. I understand that it's been addressed by the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or additions or questions before we adjourn? Okay, thank you so much for your time and your service. Meeting adjourned.